I'll add you. Okay, I'm just gonna go. It's 6 after. Now you're on mute, so just be aware of that. Woo.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. I'm gonna focus my screen, put you down to the side, and then I'll refocus you when we get started. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Oh shoot, Crowdcast.io is down or something for everyone.
Yeah. It looks like, okay, I'm pretty sure that we're broadcasting. We've been having some issues with Crowdcast, so my apologies for the delay here. We are getting started. This is our third Misty Uplink, so I'm really glad that everybody can join us. We've got one of our first external guests that's going to be joining me here shortly, and it's going to be a really good program tonight. So as we always get started with these, we talk about the things that we've done here at Misty over the last 2 weeks, what's coming up, how you can get engaged, and just the things that make us feel a lot more like a community. So I want to introduce my colleague Justin Wu, who's down here in the corner. Justin's on mute because he's got a questionable internet connection, but I'm going to put him up on screen here. Before we get started, anybody can just give me a thumbs up if they can hear me okay. I want to make sure. I know Mark said, okay, cool. Scott, good to see you. Awesome. Michael, thanks for coming. We're all good. Thanks, Lacey. I don't know why I wasn't expecting to see your name pop up there, but I'm glad that you can hear us just fine. Excellent. So what's been going on here at Misty? For those of you that have a robot already, we had a release last night. And you'll be getting that anywhere from right this second to the next 24 to 48 hours. The reason for that is just the propagation of the update itself. But what's cool about this one is this is the result of an internal bug bash. So over the last few releases, we've been curating a list of issues that you have encountered in the field and reported through our community forums. And so we've taken those to heart and made sure that we have squashed as many of those ones as possible. And so if you've had an issue in the past, hopefully that it's resolved in this one. One of the more internal things that you won't hear anywhere else is this build is also being put onto our manufacturing line. So for a lot of you that might have gotten your robot recently, you would have had an immediate update. But with a lot of the bug fixes and everything else, we've updated everything coming off the line to where those of you that are new to Misty programming aren't going to have those issues. So that was kind of a big push for us, and it's really satisfying to see that everybody is closer to parity as they get their new robots. The other thing that I wanted to call out about this particular update, there's been a few enhancements to the Visual Studio Code extension. Now, I'm going to ask Cameron some questions about it and how it makes his life easier. But all the documentation is now up to date, especially around the send external request. We're going to be walking through how to utilize an external service here shortly. And so that update in Visual Studio Code should make life a lot easier for people with tab completion and the documentation right there in line. And then just a quick update on driving. We discovered a slight known issue with one of our calls called drive track. Now, in essence, you can overdrive your Misty to where the hazard system can't stop the robot from going over a cliff or running into something just because it's operating above the prescribed speed. So we recommend using these four other calls, drive, drive time, drive arc, or drive heading. All the documentation for these things can be in docs.mistyrobotics.com. So be sure to check there and see what's new. Also, the community forums have all the release notes on the October 22nd release notes post. So Wu, you've been out and about this week. Do you want to talk about what we've been doing at events with Misty?
Yeah, I'm actually going to put a link to the conference that I have here. I was recently at the Internet Librarian conference. Now, I was told this is a conference that has been going on for 20 years, and actually had some the founders of Google actually attended a conference many years back. But we've actually had some librarians purchase our robots. One in particular is Dan from the Library of Palo Alto. And she's actually building a class that's teaching kids how to program Misty in Python and JavaScript. And she was presenting there. So we've had a lot of interest from librarians. Misty was actually in a theater show, in the conference too, and actually roaming around the floor, which was really cool to see people touching her and interacting with her. Yeah, that was where I was.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing there, Justin. So I'm gonna pull you back, and you're gonna be in the corner here. Just for some other upcoming events, we're gonna be in Austin for Austin Developer Week, the first week in November. I believe it's the 5th through the 7th. And then immediately after that event, a few of us are gonna be at the Wired 25 event in San Francisco. So that's gonna be another really good one. I'll show you the websites and how you can get involved if you're in those areas after our QA session. But let's get into the meat of it. I wanna bring in Cameron Henneke, who owns a company called GQs and is one of our earliest Misty developers. So thanks for joining us, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Cameron's been with us since the very first Robothon event that we hosted here in Boulder. And I think we used, what robots did we use? Do you remember?
0.7 maybe?
Were they points?
Yeah. I think,
so
yeah.
Pre Misty ones, which is
no arms. Yeah, nothing cute about it.
So how do you like Misty 2 compared?
She's incredible. I mean, you guys have made so many advances in the last year. I played with her at the beginning, and then I kind of got busy with work stuff and didn't touch her for maybe 6 or 9 months. And the progress you guys made was great.
Cool. Well, that was a little bit of a setup because we had a conversation beforehand, but it's always nice to hear that.
It's the truth. She's a lot more reliable and fun to play with now.
Good. No, that makes me happy. But you've been busy with Misty.
Yes.
So for those of you that haven't been able to check out some of our posts and Cameron's posts in the community forums, he's done an amazing job with integrating Dialogflow.
Yeah.
Google's Dialogflow, and so being able to communicate with Misty is a lot easier. So what made you want to get interested in using Google services in tandem with Misty?
Well, a couple things. First, Misty is great for me as a developer. It's very natural to interact with her. But if I want to show her off to my non-developer friends, I need a way for them to interact with her. So that's what was the idea behind the conversation skill. Was people with Alexa out there and Siri and all, it's pretty natural to talk to devices now. And so I wanted to build that capability for Misty, and then other skills in the future we'll build on top of that.
Nice.
That's the idea.
Yeah, and that's I'm curious now that you said that. Like, how do you guys show Misty off towards non-developers? I'd be curious, like in the chat, if you have any ideas on what would be interesting from your perspective. We can talk about that afterwards.
As far as the Google APIs, for work, I integrate with a lot of Google products, and that's cool and great, but it's always like work focused. Mm-hmm. And Google's always releasing new stuff that I usually don't get to play around with. If it's not directly related to my business, then it's like cool and out there, but I don't make time for it. So Misty is all about like my fun programming time. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was I'm going to pull together all the cool things that I want to play with and haven't experimented with yet and make them into some skill.
So outside of Dialogflow, is there anything on the Google Cloud Services that is like really interesting to you, just from a development or like just broad interest perspective?
In general, all their machine learning APIs that are coming out are pretty cool. Dialogflow is one of them. Mm-hmm. They have a vision API that's new in the last year or so. So it's taking, you can send a video feed or images, mm-hmm. and it does a lot of semantic interpretation of those, identifying objects, emotions, if it's a picture of a person, that sort of thing. So
that sounds super cool.
Yeah.
And so now what Cameron has done is built not only the skill itself, but also an amazing README that allows you to get allowed me to get up and running within 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
And I don't know, Google Cloud Services and their console is a little tricky if you're not familiar with their methodologies.
Yeah.
But once you get past that hurdle, and we'll show you here in a moment. But yeah, I wanted to thank you for taking so much time. And actually, I want to jump onto the screen share here. Let me share my screen, and then show everybody where they can find. Oh my gosh, is this? There we go. Okay. Hey Woo, can you see my screen here?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So for anybody interested, it's called Misty-Conversation on GitHub. I'm pretty sure if you search Misty-Conversation, it'll come up. I'm just gonna verify here. Yeah, well, one code result. Anyways, you'll find it. We'll post it into the chat channel here for those of you interested. But again, like we were talking about, Cameron, you did such an excellent job with the walkthrough. Even included a video. Is that best practices for stuff?
You definitely have to have a video. If you want to get people excited about your skill, you have to have a video.
That's awesome. But so walk us through. Oh no, my robot died. I'm gonna have to go get a charger. I'm gonna go get a charger, and then Cameron, do you want to walk through kind of this just from a high level the process? You have to set up an account with Google Cloud Services. Sure. You have to do X, Y, and Z. I'll be right back with the charger.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there's a couple components. You're gonna first, you'll have the code that you write for Misty, and then you need to do some setup on Google Cloud Platform to get Dialogflow running. And we have all the steps for you in the README. Create an account on Dialogflow, and then you have to first create an agent and then set up some intents. And I guess first to give an overall of the skill, the idea is to have a conversation with Misty so that a person can say something to her, and then she will have some kind of reasonable response. And so overall with the code, it's going to use Misty's wake word event. So she's going to listen for Hey Misty, which will activate the rest of the code. And then we're going to record whatever the person says next and send that as a base64 encoded audio over to Dialogflow. Dialogflow is going to match that to an intent that we set up, and is then going to pick an appropriate response, or once it's found the intent, it has fulfillments that we're going to put in, and then it will send an audio file back to Misty, which she will play. Yeah. And if everything works, it happens in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, and to articulate that, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the conversation.js, which is the JavaScript component that handles the Misty side of the conversation. And on the Dialogflow side, you'll have to create an account and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But now that I'll let Misty wake up, we'll do a quick demo, and then I can show you how we can change this using the console. At this point, I want to make sure that people. Yeah. At this point, if you have any questions at all, make sure to drop them into the Ask a Question area, and then we'll make sure to run through that after we kind of go through this component. But as Cameron was talking about, the JavaScript component is responsible for making sure that you have the right token, the tokenization component. And you did something really interesting. You created a cloud function to return this. Can you talk about that?
It kind of sidesteps the security, actually, which is fine for my experimentation.
Okay.
But to access any of the Google APIs, you have to authenticate. And then there's an access token, which lasts for about an hour. And so you have to send that every time. So you can create this. It's a JWT, JSON web token, and then you have to encode it and do all this stuff in JavaScript. So I could have added all that code into the skill itself, but it seemed really complicated and too much work. So I just created a Google Cloud function, which is in the same project as Dialogflow, So I can just make a call to this function, ask it, hey, can I have a new access token? And it sends it back. And then that's what we use to authenticate to the Dialogflow when we make those external calls.
Yeah, I'll pull that up here real quick. And speaking of updates, it looks like my robot decided at this moment to update.
Perfect.
Awesome.
System works.
So over-the-air updates are successful. And so the part that that Cameron you're talking about is this send external requests, get access token.
So when
that will then hit this code here that runs on a Google instance.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's just, we call that at the beginning of the skill. So we get a fresh access token. It lasts for an hour, and that's plenty for having a conversation with Misty.
Cool. And then, as you mentioned, it uses the key phrase recognized event, which the default callback function is underscore the name of the call function. So in this case, it's underscore key phrase recognized. And then what are you doing here, Cameron?
So we play a little noise, just the warp sound, to let the person know that we have heard the wake call and we're doing something now. And we change the color of the LED, so there's some visual cue there. And then we're going to start recording. And I just set it to record for 4 seconds. So you, as a user, you have 4 seconds to say something to Misty.
So that was the sound of my robot successfully updating, which is pretty cool, doing that live. So if,
really awesome.
If you don't hear that sound, let us know. Awesome. So you're recording for 4 seconds here. You stop recording audio. You change the LED to red, which means what?
Just the recording stops. So
okay.
The person knows, hey, you've been cut off. You can't say anything more.
Okay. And then you call get audio file, which retrieves the recording file.
Yeah, that just gets the file off of the Misty robot. And then we're going to do something with it, which is what you see in the process audio file there.
And is this on a timer, or how are you calling that?
This is the return call. So when we call get audio file, you can use the default response, or you can set your own name for the callback. And so I just gave it something a little more descriptive. We're going to process the audio now.
So this is I personally had never done this because I used the default callbacks a lot of the time. But this is a really interesting way that you can string together pieces of functionality by overriding the default callback. And in this case, get audio file, saying process audio file as the when that event comes back.
Yeah, that's the next step. So it's really cool that the platform allows you to put in your own callback names if you want. So
again, like this makes it, I love that you did this because I haven't actually seen it in the wild yet. So it's cool to see.
Great.
Okay, so then you re-enable listening.
Yeah, and that just restarts it so she can listen again for a wake word. But then this is the really cool part of the skill is the call to an external request. And this is the section of code where that happens.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just getting ready for the request. You'll see that we get the base 64 audio, and then we kind of put together some parameters that we're going to send off to Dialogflow. And
what's your normal workflow for figuring out what the parameters for like a REST call is, or an API call?
So
like, are you a Postman guy, or are you like curl, or?
I'm a documentation and then Postman.
Okay.
So yeah, Google has pretty good documentation on all the available parameters and stuff that you can send over. So I looked at that. They have some sample code there. And then, yeah, I first got the call working with Postman.
Okay.
And actually, as a process as a whole, I kind of worked on different pieces of this skill and then strung them all together.
Got it.
So the first part I did work on was just getting Misty to record audio based on the wake word. And I got that part working. And then I kind of worked on the Dialogflow. I used a pre-recorded audio file and just sent that over Postman to see if I could get it to connect to Dialogflow and do that processing. Excellent. And then I kind of stitched it together.
Cool. Well, and that's, so we walked through the JavaScript side. Let's look at how Dialogflow operates. And this has been a lot of fun for me playing with this. So this is the Dialogflow console. And in the instructions, you say you have to create a new intent. So let's do this live here. We're gonna have Misty react to. I'm just gonna call this Misty.Uplink. What is what do you think of uplinks?
So as you can see here, Chris is typing in different training phrases, and what's happening in the background is Google is not just going to do an exact match, but it's actually applying machine learning. So you can type in various ways that people might ask a question or say a phrase, and then you can have various responses in the text response, which you see he's putting down there. So a person might say exactly, what do you think of uplink? Or they might say a variation of that. Do you think uplink is cool or something? And the more training phrases you add, then the better it is at responding to different variations.
So what I'm doing is just typing a variety of training phrases that Dialogflow will then react to, right? Have you been to a Misty Uplink? What do you think of uplinks? And then whatever variation we can think of. And this is an interesting thing that I just discovered. Cameron, what's happening here?
So Dialogflow has a set of parameters that it can identify in the speech, and these are essentially variables, which then you can access in your responses. So
so in this case, if I wanted to have a response utilize the value from the intent, then all we need to do is use this $person.
In your text response.
And I'll show that here in a second. But let's try this out. So we'll hit save. So now we have a new intent on Dialogflow that will react to some variation of have you been to a Misty Uplink, or what do you think of uplinks? And then it will choose a number of these responses. And we'll talk about this here in a second. But let's
see if it works.
Let's see if it works. So it's loaded on my robot. I'm going to go over to Skill Runner. I'm going to connect to my robot. Successfully connected. It looks like my conversation skill is still running. So if I go, let me swipe this. Let's stop sharing. Hey, you should see us now. And now we'll have to bring Misty over.
Bring her over.
See if. Hey, Misty. Oh, hey, Misty. Let's restart the skill. I don't know if maybe the update did something funky to the execution here. Now, for those that are new, whenever you run a skill, it's nice to have the console open to kind of see what's going on here. As you can see, some of our testing, this is a base64 string that I was debugging with last time I was playing with it. So I'm going to click Start. There we go. Misty's listening will beep you when she hears, hey, Misty. Thanks for putting that in the debug.
Sure.
Hey, Misty.
What?
Have you been to an uplink? There's a base64 string.
We want to see more of Cameron.
Yay! All right.
So that's really the cool thing about this skill, is that you can customize it with whatever phrases that you want, and you can give Misty a personality, make her knowledgeable about all kinds of things.
Yeah. So that's kind of the demonstration component. We're happy to answer any questions. We've got Cameron here, so if you have like, hey Cameron, how do you deal with X, Y, or Z? It's a good chance to pick his brain. And again, I'm going to go through the Ask Questions area down at the bottom here. Woo, is there anything in chat that we should address first?
None that I saw come through.
Okay.
But if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them there.
Can you show us the debug console, Scott? Yeah, we'll if in the let me share my screen here first. Sorry, give me one moment. Sharing screen. You got to select it. You got to share it. Okay, it looks like that should be the screen. Yep. Okay. Cool. So for those that are new, we recommend using the Chrome browser just because it's the one that we primarily test on. We do smoke test other browsers and make sure that they operate nicely. But in Chrome, if you just right-click anywhere on the page and do Inspect, You have the JavaScript console as the second element. I think there's a keyboard shortcut. For whatever reason, I just always go right-click inspect.
Me too.
Okay, cool. But this will show any debug messages and events that come through. It'll also stream WebSocket information if you're using the command center. So it's just a critical component in anybody's debug tool belt.
For sure.
So Scott, a good question. We always like to make sure that everybody's aware of some of these things, as they get their new robots.
And actually, when I was building that skill, if you switch back to the console.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
This was really helpful for me in making sure that getting the audio file sent over to Dialogflow, because I had some trouble with that. I wasn't sure exactly some parameters, like you have to tell it what kind of audio file you're sending and what the hertz are, sample hertz and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can see here the base 64, like when that was all A's, I knew that I was not sending correct audio there. And then when I saw that something a little more complicated.
Yeah, there's probably something useful.
Yeah.
And so for those that are new to base 64 encoding, if it's all A's, it's a blank file. And I think every base 64 string ends with a bunch of equal signs. Or an equal sign if it's short. Now these files are pretty large. I think it goes.
I think they get truncated.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So, good point. If you're trying to output a large file as a base 64 encoding, I think Misty or the browser itself will truncate those results so you don't see the entire file. Postman will not. So if you're trying to look at responses. Use Postman to get like the full file and then save that if you're doing like what Cameron was talking about, verifying, different components of the workflow. All right, I'm going to stop sharing again, go back and start answering some questions here. Let me see. Love using the wake word on Cameron's code. Will we see a method for launching skills from wake word and skill call? That's a good question, Scott. You can have skills start other skills. So the idea is that you could have a meta skill that is only doing wake word, and then you'd have to do what we're doing here with intent, and then have the response, and then have that in some sort of switch statement in the callback to be able to trigger and initiate different skills. That's the workaround today. Oops, Woo, you're you're front and center here. Let me swap that.
Sorry, Chris, I was just going to add that, Scott, just to clarify, my interpretation of the question was that, it was similar to Alexa, where you'd say, hey, hopefully I don't enable my Alexa, but hey, Alexa, can you, open Misty or something like that. It's funny how you have to whisper when I talk to Alexa, because I have an Alexa at home. But anyway.
I react when I whisper.
But yeah, it's something that I was saying that's something that Alexa does, and the way Chris does it is possible too. But something to put into our wish list and roadmap, and something that we would be happy to discuss with you further. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, and this is an important time to call out. We take everything that you guys want and hope and dream of for Misty seriously, and we have a special section called wish list, where if there's anything like that that you want to see in this current iteration or future iterations of our robots, be sure to put them in there. That really helps us to kind of prioritize and make sure that we're listening to the community and building the right thing for the right people.
Scott, if you put that in, I'll vote for it.
There you go. Scott, you got two votes there. But yeah, so unfortunately, wake word to trigger a skill isn't built in, just because there are certain things like the natural language processing that we can't do locally that's dependent on a cloud service at this point. And Justin, did you add a question? Any questions to ask? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna answer this one as yes, there's a place to ask questions. And does anybody have questions to ask? Cameron, have you found Dialogflow to be fast enough for handling regular back and forth conversation? And if not, is there anything that can be done to optimize things for better response times?
Great question. So back and forth conversation, it's a little halted. There's probably 2, sometimes 3 second delay. And there's a lot going on here. So there's a lot of places that can be the bottleneck. you have to get the audio off of Misty and then send it over the wire to Dialogflow. So there's time there, and then Dialogflow itself, it processes the request really quickly. So it can send back the audio file, but then you have to send that audio over the wire and then save it to Misty and play it. So is it super fast? It's maybe not a natural conversation at this point. Things that can make it faster.
Well, and there's a concept, and Wu, correct me if I'm wrong, but endpointing, where you can detect the end of speech.
Oh yeah.
Which is well, it's challenging one, but you know, if that's something that would make it easier for developers, again, put that into wish list.
Definitely, and I will vote for that one too.
Endpointing.
Because if you remember in the code, it records for 4 seconds. So whether you're saying something that takes 4 seconds or not, it's not even going to start processing until after that 4 seconds of recording and sending it off.
So Michael, for your question, depending on the type of interactions and the duration of responses, you can kind of optimize a little bit. But the flexibility from doing short and long right now, we don't have the ability on the robot to determine the end of a statement. So
one workaround that I've thought, I haven't actually implemented it yet, until endpointing happens, which I'm super excited about, is to tap Misty on the head when you're done talking, and she could say, "Hey, I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions, and just tap me when you're done," and then that would trigger the stop recording. So that would be one way to work around, so you could have short responses or handle longer responses.
So you could use capacitive touch, you could use bump sensors, you could use, I'm trying to think of any sort of input. If you wanted to do sentiment analysis and frown, that sounds weird. Anyways, we'll talk about that. But yeah, so I'm curious, and Michael, I'm going to ask you a question here. Is there a product that you can have natural interactions with available? Because I'm curious to see like what that latency feels like when done like in that sense. So if you want to throw that into chat, I'm curious to see if there's what you think is done well. Cameron, do you have automated tests for this skill? If not, have you thought about how you might do it?
I don't have automated tests right now. In the process of building it, at first I was just coding all in terminal using Vim, and that was kind of a really slow cycle for making some code changes. Then I had to use the skill runner to drag the files over and upload them to Misty, and that was getting really super annoying actually. And I happened to be talking to some people here, and they said, "Hey, have you tried the new Visual Code Studio plugin?" So I got that going, and it made the development process a lot faster because with a couple keyboard shortcuts, I can just upload the code in the skill, and it runs it automatically. So kudos to you guys for building such a great plugin. Made it a lot more fun to develop.
The Visual Studio Code extension does make things a lot easier. Yeah, in the last update, you can actually get the WebSockets for what I just showed in the debug console in the Visual Studio Code itself.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty cool. So
for testing Dialogflow, if you sign into Dialogflow and you're in the web interface, they actually have a pretty good way to test your different phrases that a person might say, and then the responses that come out, and you can see that all just within the web page. So if you're trying to set up different phrases and you have 5 different things, you want to see if it will respond to some other phrase, then you can just type that in and it'll show you what a sample response might be. For end-to-end testing, I don't have anything yet. Something to think about, and it'd be great to see if other people come up with a testing platform.
Yeah, and as far as testing individual pieces of functionality, I think what I do personally is just write a number of REST scripts to make sure that things are responded in the way that I expect. I've got kind of a basic Misty physical unit test. They're like, hey, top to top of my head, like, okay, great, that's responding, that's working. So if you want to do Cucumber unit tests for Misty using REST calls, like, more power to you. That's a potential way to do it.
Yeah.
All right. I think that was the end of the questions. Oh, here we go. Here's another one. Oh, wait, I'm unanswered. Top. You're welcome, Scott. I love these types of things because it kind of gets me thinking of like, how would I do that?
Yeah.
If I was to implement a conversation skill, making sure that all the robots, if I had 10 of them, making sure that all of them work. Like, that's an interesting problem. I'd have a Bluetooth speaker and all 10 robots and make sure that the callbacks work on all of them. So that way, it's been kind of interesting here at Misty when we've been working on Wakeboard. You have at any given time somebody in the office going, "Hey, Misty."
What?
Oh my gosh. Well, how are you? That's going to be garbled response. Okay, phew.
Yeah, she's not accepting.
Well, that's kind of the end of the content that I have. Cameron, do you have any questions?
Oh, looks like we
have one more question. Has anyone tried to run the scale between two Misty robots?
Oh, no, but we should do that right after this.
We should. We're going to give that a shot. We will report back and see how it works. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. You do need to make sure that they record. Can you do that? Like even I'm thinking like, can Alexa and Google Home like respond to each other?
I think people have done that before.
Huh.
I don't see any reason why not. We could have one Misty just play some pre-recorded audio.
Yeah.
And then like one Misty could say, "Hey Misty, what is your age?" And then she could reply back.
Yeah, I think the laugh at the beginning might have caused an issue there, but
we will definitely try that and maybe post a video. That would be super fun.
We will experiment with Misty's talking to Misty's through skills. What's your next skill going to be, Cameron?
My next skill, I'm working on something called empathy. That's what I'm calling it right now. And the idea is that Misty will recognize a person and then tell what kind of facial expression they have and then say some appropriate response. So the overall flow of the skill will be Misty recognizes a face using face recognition API. Then she will take a picture and send that off to the Google Vision API. And the Vision API has some, it can detect emotion in a face, and it will either say whether it's happy, angry, sad, or surprised, and then can send that back with like how confident it is in that answer. So it'll send that back to Misty, and then she will say something like, "Hey Cameron, you look sad today. What's wrong?" So that's the goal of the empathy skill, and I'm about halfway there. So
nice. Well, we'll have you back on when we can do a demo.
Great.
Thanks, thanks, Rick. Yeah, we'll make sure Cameron shares that. Well, it's getting on in the evening. Wow, that sounded really bizarre. It's getting on. Well,
time to hit the hay.
As always, the best place to get in contact with us is the community forums. We, again, monitor them constantly. Cameron's in there if you want to ask him any questions directly. The wish list, which I think that Ben or Wu had posted the link to. If you have feature requests, we've already got a few upvotes for endpointing, so that's excellent for us to know where people's interests are at. We'll be in Austin, Developer Week, 5th to the 7th. We'll be in San Francisco for the Wire 25 event. Both going to be a lot of fun. We'll be doing a lot of demonstrations, get a chance for anybody that doesn't have a Misty to be able to play with one. But keep in touch, and be sure to check out Misty or Cameron's conversation skill on GitHub and the blog. You have the blog post.
The blog post.
Yes, I didn't even. Hey, Lacey, can you put the link to the blog post there? That'd be fantastic. So Cameron was nice enough to write kind of a little article with us on, well,
Q&A.
Yeah,
a
there
little interview style.
There we go.
On why I did it and challenges I faced along the way.
Yeah.
So.
And just because you run GQs, which is how do you give me the quick thing of what you do professionally?
I created an app that helps people get organized, and it works with Google products. So it's collaborative task management for teams.
Yeah, so a few of us here at Misty use it. It's an excellent tool, so be sure to check that out. And yeah, community. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lacey. Appreciate it. So we'll be back here in 2 weeks, and be sure to let us know what you think, what questions you want answered, any topics that you want covered, and I'll be back in 14 days. Thanks, everybody.